to the question about what success looks like for me. So I'm thinking along the lines of we can, strictly on a personal level, so our family can just about break even month to month, I would say.
Yes.
So we're not worrying as such. We're just about comfortable. So to me, success would be, instead of thinking about a holiday in the UK every year, it would be being able to expand the horizons and start to show our children like the world a bit more.
Yes.
Perhaps a rail trip to Europe or even a road trip to Europe, something like that. But as I say that, it's occurring to me that would mean I'm spending less money in the UK, which is...
Gosh, well, you don't. I mean, I guess so. But the simple thing is, whatever you choose to spend the money on, I wonder how many people are in your boat where it's Mr. McCorber territory, isn't it? Where you know, just under what's coming in is going out equals happiness. Just over what's going out is coming in equals misery. You would just go by, as I suspect most people would just go by, personal spending power. Just the idea that your money is going to go, your income is going to go a little bit further than it currently does with regard to your outgoings.
I think it's a sense of having the choice of where I can spend it as well.
How do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, sort of as I say, I can think about holidays in the UK. It's just a quick trip up to the lakes is what I'd be thinking about.
You could do worse, but the weather's not reliable.
Yeah. Exactly, but it'd be nice to start thinking about trips further afield, or even trips to America, as mental as it is over there at the moment, or trips to Canada or.
And how would you know if that happened? So travel's obviously important to you. Other people will be thinking about a new car, perhaps, or just expenditure in general. But if that happened, if we were here 3 years hence, and you were feeling able to make those kind of decisions, how confident are you that you would credit the government with the improvement?
I think I would, because it's part of the reason I voted Labour.
It might not even be true. It doesn't really matter, does it? I saw it in America. This isn't a criticism of you. It's a criticism of some American voters, where the economic message landed, the idea that that Biden was a disaster and Trump was going to fix everything, took hold for significant swathes of the population, even though it wasn't actually supported by any of the facts or economic data. But we would probably, come the next election, if people felt they had a few more quid in their pocket, we would probably all give the credit to Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think it is exactly that. I think as much as I like to think of myself as sort of thinking of the community rather than myself, I do think at the end of the day it does kind of boil down to yourself and your own space, rather than the wider community.
Yeah, and you pick on the specifics, but I think I'll take your point as a more broader endorsement of spending power. You're looking for increased spending power, which can happen in a number of ways, of course. If your bills come down, your spending power goes up. If your wages go up, your spending power goes up, unless the prices go up. So the prices come down. So I guess that's economics.
Success for me would be to have a more sustainable economy that could pay the bills, keep the NHS going, improve public services. And I can't see any other way to do it, because at this point, asking people to increase their tax input is just not going to work.
Because people haven't got the money.
Sorry?
Because people haven't really got the money. They haven't got the wiggle room.
No, they
for
haven't.
A tax
They haven't.
increase.
I think.
Very rich people have. Don't tell anyone, Janice, but I could afford a couple of points in the pound on income tax.
I think we could, but I think on the general taxation that would go down like a lead balloon,
yes,
especially when trust in public services is so low.
So what does that look like? Does that look like waiting lists coming down then? And I'm looking at sort of things we could point to as proof that traffic is moving in the right direction.
I think in terms of service improvement, in terms of the overall trajectory of our economy, it's about being able to pay the bills for the services that people, and benefits and pensions that people probably rightfully demand. But if we don't address growth in this country. We've got an ageing population, and I just don't see how we're going to keep our economy sustainable.
I think the biggest thing I took from, I did listen to the speech, was simply the energy. Yeah, exactly. The energy of it. Now, it's quite, I mean, I've been involved in politics, but it was the energy of it. My background, by the way, is I'm an ex-global guy with AstraZeneca, which keeps getting mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it used to be called ICI, so it's kind of disappeared. But I also lived and worked in India. I set up something called UK India Business Council, and currently I'm working in something called Mutual Equity. So what is good for my business, I'm a leadership transformation peak experience guy, and that is about getting people to change. And if they can feel empowered and get ownership of something and they feel positive, they tend to think differently and take more action. I know it sounds a bit woo, but
not necessarily.
No, I mean, I've listened to your work on this, but that is what leaders want. They want to be empowered. They want to empower other people.
And that's very much the path she was on this morning.
I think so, yeah.
I do too.
I mean, and I think the bedrock of, growth is not a strategy. It's an objective.
Yes.
I did economics 100 years ago, but it's not. Most decent companies use something called OKR, right? So it's called objectives and key results. It's how they, like Google and the top companies, do things. And I think the bedrock shouldn't be black, is my little slogan. That's no offence to BlackRock, but focusing on 0.1% of British companies, like the big guys that they keep hanging out with, isn't the answer. It's the 50% of GDP that comes from the smaller companies, the scale-ups, not the startups, that we need to empower. And one of the things we're, like, on my theme of empowerment and a new type of economics, is mutual equity is not private equity. It's we have.
I have to just point out that we're supposed to be discussing the speech that Rachel Reeves delivered, not your life's work.
No, I'm just thinking, in order for her words to empower people and help me grow my business, for example, we've got millions of old blokes and women that are retiring from their companies and they've got nobody to give it to. So why don't we have more employee ownership? So the distribution of wealth is increased. Young people are brought up through the ranks. The company is owned by staff.
But this has got nothing to do with her speech, Richard, respectfully. Well, this is your speech.
No, I just want her to empower.
No, I know you did, but I'm asking what we will look at from what she has announced as evidence of whether or not the plan is working or failing.
Well, the plan will work if people have got more money in their pocket if they own some of the assets and the revenues and the profits, right?
Okay, so would it be nice to hear that in the speech, the idea of mutual equity, which is the field in which you work, but it wasn't. So we can't really use it as a measure of whether the plan is working or not. So I'm not criticising you, because I don't think wait and see pie is going to win any economics prizes anytime soon, even if you can read the ingredients for the first time in 3 or 4 administrations. David is in Kensington. David, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, it was you, James, saying.
Well, that's how it works, isn't it? Yes, quite right too. Talk to me about Heathrow.
So I love it. I'm pro it. I think it's really important. Like you, I live under the flight path. It's massive for the economy. If you want an example of where, a major hub airport can be fabulous growth, just look at Dubai. Instead,
Schiphol, I think, is
30 years ago was nothing. It's amazing today. That's all great. In fact, there's another point that nobody seems to make, is that what people don't like about the Heathrow third runway is the skies are noisy. Yes. But actually, for anybody who lives under the flight path, if we had a third runway, they'd get fewer flights over their head because
are we sure about? Because this is stacking. I know this, and I'm sure, like you, that there are local forums.
It's not only stacking.
Go on.
It's not only stacking. It's basically you've got. I don't know if you've ever driven into town at the end of the day and you just see this incredible queue of planes in the sky.
I thought that was stacking.
It's not just stacking. It's not just stacking. It's just that flight path is full.
Right.
Heathrow, 99% full before the pandemic.
Yes.
It's full. Right now,
but when you build, when you hang on,
should expand it.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I guess the concern is, if we park the environmental bit of the conversation briefly, which of course is impossible to do long term, but you build a new runway, capacity increases, and eventually that's full as well, and so the problems that people in Kensington and Barnes and elsewhere, Hounslow most obviously have, do not actually improve at all. They will get worse.
Well, actually, I think that's too pessimistic, because what we're seeing is incredible advances in aeroplanes being quiet. So by the time they're full again, of course they will be.
Yes.
By the time they're full again, the planes will be so much quieter.
You've got to bet the house on that, haven't you?
I was watching my son play rugby.
Yes.
Right underneath the flight path, right under it,
Yeah.
and over came this massive A380. This a few years ago.
Right.
And I look up, and you know, it's like a 500-seat plane.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, why is that not noisier? It's amazing the advances we're actually getting, and you know, by the time it's full, we'll have all kinds of other stuff. I mean,
you would be mad not to hope so, wouldn't you? And I don't know what the prioritisation of things like noise pollution is for the aviation industry, but the notion of sustainable aviation fuel is a long way off. But if you shift the focus and put more weight on delivering the things that matter most to people beneath flight paths or people with environmental concerns, you can't please all of the people all of the time, but you could possibly work towards making everybody a bit less unpleased with a few inevitable exceptions.
Are you familiar with works of E.K. Schumacher, the 1960s economist who wrote As You Grow, So Shall You Weep, and also he wrote Small is Beautiful? And basically, I loved his work because he goes completely against this whole sort of notion, this mantra, this obsession of growth. You don't need growth to be happy. You don't need growth to be successful. You don't need growth necessarily at all. I found myself, I'm in business, I've found that whenever I've been on a certain size in terms of employees, the business becomes much less efficient. Actually, the most efficient business is by yourself. It's just a notion of just growth. I mean, look at the problems we now got with fuel and thinking let's buy cheap Russian fuel.
Again, I listen, this is my fault. I'm the blooming host of the programme, but you're not really talking to me about anything that Rachel Reeves said in the context of how will we know whether it's working or not.
For me, yeah. Well,
yeah.
That's a good question, James.
Thanks. I thought you phoned in to answer it, but here we are.
No. Do you know what I've been thinking about it? I think possibly less food banks.
Yeah, but we've already had that. Flipping heck, Claire came in with that. And of course, some food banks possibly are closing because people are too poor to support them now. So even that measure, what a miserable git I am, honestly. Even that isn't necessarily a wholly reliable measure of things moving in the correct directions, but a healthy and I think happy recommendation of E.F. Schumacher's work.